professor. So let me present my findings. Sorry. Today's my presentation is about the acoustic ecology of karstic caves and the role of spectrogram in it. Here on this image, you can see the Prometheus cave where we conducted our research. Here is my presentation roadmap, and it essentially consists of introduction, research object, theoretical framework, and data presentation. And I want to begin my presentation with the quote from Murray Schafer that today all sounds belong to a continuous field of possibilities. So essentially, let me talk a little about the theoretical basis of the study. In acoustic ecology, one of the cornerstones of this research studies the relationships between sound environments and living organisms. And it is based on the foundational theory of Murray Schafer. The key concept is the soundscape itself, and in itself the soundscape is both natural and cultural phenomena. And here in my research, I present cave as a tool, a dynamic system that captures and reflects both natural and anthropogenic sounds. And the spectrogram analysis is a super tool for offering visual and quantitative representation of sound. What is ecomusicology? Ecomusicology is essentially a bridge. It bridges ecological and musical studies, and it examines also the soundscapes, comprising biophony, natural sounds that is, geophony, non-biological natural sounds, and anthropophony, human-made sounds. The importance of it is quite tremendous, but it's also the research of the last years, especially I would say not only in EU but also in Africa and in Asia, that brings forth the interest toward this object, this research object, I would say. This interdisciplinary field not only studies sound as an ecological and cultural phenomenon, but it also advocates for preserving the ecosystems. So, a research object here is karstic caves. I don't want to dwell a lot about acoustic caves and into the subject because I think all of us know what is the karstic caves. Karstic caves is essentially natural caves that form underground and are created by the dissolution of rocks such as limestone, gypsum, and dolomite. They are characterized by very unique geological features, and they are insanely beautiful, of course. But another thing is that they offer a very interesting, unparalleled environment for studying the relationships between natural soundscapes and human activity. They essentially create an ecological signal, and for our research, for my research, we consider them as a cultural artifact. So here, through this approach, the study addresses key questions. First, how do natural and human soundscapes interact in karstic caves? Second, what are the impacts of human activity on cave soundscapes? And third, how can spectrograms support the theoretical and practical goals of understanding these interactions? About the theoretical framework itself and the method itself. Again, I won't dwell too much into it because it's quite complicated and it consists of very many tiny parts, but essentially I am utilizing the spectrogram approach, but the spectrogram approach in itself is not I would say very connected to the ecomusicological research, but it is more connected to the subfields of the ecomusicology, such as our soundscape ecology, sonic ecology, and cultural acoustics. As for the spectrogram analysis, I would say that the field first the research was done in the following way. First, the field recordings were conducted in the Prometheus cave, West Georgia, capturing diverse acoustic environments such as large chambers, narrow passages, and so on and so on. And the recordings were made by the Zoom H6 and the Roland R26. Also, for the purpose of spectrogram analysis research employs a sonic visualizer, if you know that. A spectrogram is made into this program in sonic visualizer, and essentially I use a 2D dimensional visualization of sound signal while using components that are waveform layer, the time axis sublayer, and frequency axis sublayer. The spectrogram analysis is also quite a modern approach to ecomusicology, and it is also quite, I would say, thorough and deeper a tool, because it allows to do us so much more. As for literature review, I would say a little bit a systematic review of academic databases using keywords was made, and the key themes like ecomusicology and ecosystem and the soundscape and spectrogram analysis was used. The study adheres to ethical considerations too, including proper citation sources and minimizing ecological disturbances during field work. Here is the streamlined version of the results section that maintains the depth while organizing the content. So here we have the so-called Navenahevi cave entrance spectrogram. This spectrogram here is mixed, is made of several layers. So essentially here we have a pristine soundscape dominated by the stable frequency band of cicada songs. I call it as the noise blanket layer, and we also have, if you see here, the dynamic wind spikes that are seen as vertical bars. Additional elements such as dragonfly sounds enrich the texture. But also, if we compare here for another spectrogram, it is from Prometheus cave. It is also the entrance. Here, the spectrogram shows a compromised soundscape. The cicada songs here is also present too. It persists as a background layer, but it is overshadowed by crowd chatter, which spans a broad frequency range and diminishes the clarity of natural sounds. So, notably, wind patterns are absent here, and they are masked by human-induced noise. So essentially, this study produces a comparative analysis based on spectrogram results. So I can essentially point out several parameters that are frequency distribution, amplitude variation, tonal stability, dynamic variability, and human-induced doctrine or disruption. Therefore, I pointed out this entrance zones to the acoustic caves as transitional zones, and they act as a sonic threshold between ecosystems. And these transitional zones are present in every karstic cave, and they are essential for understanding how external sounds transition into internal cave ambiences. I can point out the patterns of coexistence and interference, essentially how the humans affect these natural ambiences and how the natural ambience flows into human ambience. We can take the example of the big cities, by the way, and how are the parks located in them, and how the park ambience affects city ambience, and so on and so on. But this is not the point of ongoing research here. I essentially point out those two caves example. So essentially, I want to also present small ideas and the final thoughts about the spectrogram. Spectrogram analysis is very, very useful for revealing this low-level human noise that disrupts the integrity of the frequency of natural soundscapes. But also it can be used for practical applications. For example, we can use soundscapes and spectrum analysis for providing and understanding the dynamics of each cave. For example, managers of the caves can enforce noise management strategies such as limiting group sizes, scheduling silent hours, and creating quiet zones. Also, we can integrate the spectrogram analysis into the monitoring programs for caves to track and mitigate the noise disruptions. Also, some noise isolating barriers can be placed outside the such caves, such as Prometheus Cave or Navenahevi Cave or Sataplia Cave, and so on and so on. Also, for example, in this cave, the Sataplia Cave. But also, finally, I want to say a little about the limitations of the study, because this study presented here on this conference is just a part of a broader, much bigger ongoing investigation into the ecomusicological aspects of various natural soundscapes, and it essentially comprises of more than 50 recordings and so on, and the number will grow in future. And another moment that is like a spectrogram analysis in itself. It's quite a high technology tool, and it requires time for musicologists to understand it. It is, I would say, quite a difficult method to use it on the go. So it will require specialized knowledge to interpret and present effectively. Also, I want to acknowledge and say my thanks to the funding from Fundamental Research Project of lately supported by Shota Rustaveli National Science Foundation of Georgia, and thank you for express the thanks to the conference organizers and to the creative team with which I'm working on this project. That is Eka Chabashvili, John Yastashvili, Makavish Saladze, Nino Joania, Nino Yashvili, and the project consultant, Dr. Aaron Allen. Thank you for attention. If you have any questions, please proceed with them.